For what sake am I willing to suffer? One of the most profound insights taught by Buddha is that suffering is an unavoidable part of life. Every human being, regardless of wealth, status, intelligence, or success, encounters pain, disappointment, loss, uncertainty, and struggle. We suffer when we lose what we love. We suffer when we fail to get what we want. We suffer when life changes in ways we cannot control. At first glance, this may sound pessimistic, but the teaching is actually deeply hopeful. The Buddha did not simply say that suffering exists. He also taught that freedom from unnecessary suffering is possible. Human beings are not condemned to remain trapped in cycles of frustration, resentment, fear, and dissatisfaction forever. There is a path toward greater peace, wisdom, and liberation. Yet this teaching contains an important paradox. The path that leads beyond suffering often requires a different kind of suffering. Growth is rarely comfortable. Transformation is rarely easy. Freedom often demands discipline. The suffering of staying the same. Many people assume that avoiding difficulty is the easiest path. But avoiding difficulty does not eliminate suffering, it merely changes its form. Consider the person who spends hours doom scrolling through social media. For a moment, it feels easier than facing their responsibilities, fears, or emotions. The endless stream of information provides distraction and temporary comfort. Yet at the end of the day, they may feel empty, anxious, disconnected, or dissatisfied. The discomfort of discipline was avoided, but another kind of suffering took its place. The same pattern appears throughout life. Avoiding difficult conversations may spare us temporary discomfort, but it can lead to years of misunderstanding. Avoiding exercise may feel easier today, but it can create health problems later. Avoiding self-reflection may protect us from uncomfortable truths, but it often leaves us repeating the same mistakes. The suffering of stagnation is subtle because it arrives gradually. It feels familiar, predictable, comfortable. But comfort is not always peace. Sometimes comfort is simply a prison that has become familiar. The suffering of growth. Now, consider the alternative. Meditating for 20 minutes can feel difficult. Sitting quietly with your thoughts may reveal anxieties, regrets, and emotions you usually avoid. Learning a new skill can be frustrating. Breaking unhealthy habits can feel exhausting. Forgiving someone who hurt you can seem almost impossible. These experiences involve struggle. But unlike the suffering of avoidance, this struggle has direction. It is the discomfort of growth. Just as muscles become stronger through resistance, character becomes stronger through challenges. Patience is developed by enduring impatience. Courage is developed by facing fear. Wisdom is developed by confronting ignorance. Compassion is developed by opening the heart even when it would be easier to close it. This type of suffering is not punishment. It is transformation. The burden of hatred and the challenge of compassion. One of the clearest examples is resentment. Many people carry anger for years, even decades. They replay old wounds in their minds, reliving injuries long after the original event has passed. In a strange way, hatred can feel easier than forgiveness. Hatred requires no vulnerability, no humility, no change. It allows us to remain exactly as we are. Forgiveness, however, demands courage. It asks us to release the story that has defined our pain. It requires us to acknowledge our shared humanity and let go of the desire for revenge. This process can be deeply uncomfortable. But while resentment chains us to the past, compassion opens the possibility of freedom. Both paths involve suffering. One imprisons. The other liberates. Samsara, the cycle of repeated suffering. In Buddhist thought, this repetitive cycle is often called samsara. Samsara is not merely a philosophical concept about rebirth. It can also be understood psychologically. Every time we repeat the same destructive habits, we create our own personal samsara, the same fears, the same reactions. the same conflicts, the same disappointments, again and again. Without awareness, we become trapped in patterns that generate suffering while convincing ourselves that change is impossible. The path of growth interrupts that cycle. It asks us to endure the temporary discomfort of change so that we no longer have to endure the endless repetition of the same pain. Choosing your suffering. Many people spend their lives searching for a way to avoid suffering altogether. But such a path does not exist. Every meaningful achievement demands effort. Every loving relationship requires sacrifice. Every worthwhile goal requires patience. Every transformation requires struggle. The question, therefore, is not whether you will suffer. You will. The question is what kind of suffering you will choose. Will you choose the suffering of regret or the suffering of growth? The suffering of resentment or the suffering of forgiveness? The suffering of procrastination or the suffering of discipline? The suffering of remaining the same or the suffering of becoming more? One kind of suffering gradually diminishes your life. The other gradually expands it. A different way to view pain. When viewed this way, pain is no longer merely an obstacle. Sometimes it is a guide. The discomfort of learning points toward knowledge. The discomfort of training points toward strength. The discomfort of honesty points toward authenticity. The discomfort of compassion points toward freedom. The path is difficult not because it is wrong, but because transformation always asks us to leave behind an old version of ourselves. The caterpillar suffers the loss of its former form before becoming a butterfly. The seed breaks open before it becomes a tree. Likewise, human beings often must endure the discomfort of change before they can experience the peace, wisdom, and fulfillment they seek. Final reflection. The Buddha's teaching is not that life should be free from struggle. Rather, it is that we can learn to suffer wisely. There is pain that keeps us trapped, and there is pain that helps us grow. There is suffering that deepens our chains, and suffering that breaks them. In the end, suffering is unavoidable. But meaning is found in choosing which struggles are worthy of our energy, our commitment, and our lives. So, whenever you face a difficult decision, ask yourself, which pain leads to a better future? Which struggle helps me become who I am meant to be? Because the quality of your life is often determined not by how much suffering you avoid, but by the purpose for which you are willing to endure it.